I'm going to read one or two essays from an author named Sam Keene. It's from a book called Sightings, Extraordinary Encounters with Ordinary Birds. I am a bird watcher, and before you all run away screaming, these aren't just about bird watching. These are Sam Keene is actually a philosopher, and he tends to take the sighting of a bird as a reason to kind of ponder, kind of like I did in my essay, the nature of the universe. The first essay is called Sparrows, Sapsuckers, and Rattlesnakes, the Commonwealth of Sentient Beings. In my young mind, sparrows fell into two categories, the uncommon and precious, and the common and expendable. To the amateur eye, most sparrows are simply basic brown birds. Because they look so much alike, striped, streaked, spotted, and generally tweedy, they are hard to distinguish from one another. On my expeditions, I would frequently see a small brown blur in a bush, which would disappear before I could study its markings to determine its identity. So I never became a connoisseur of sparrows, although I was often delighted by the lyric singing of white-crowned and song sparrows. English sparrows were definitely common, uninteresting, and a nuisance. An undifferentiated horde, they invaded farms and inner cities and displaced better birds. They nested en masse in the eaves of ordinary houses, barns, and vine-covered public buildings, filling the air with their continuous chirping and covering sidewalks with their droppings. Store owners along the main street periodically hired a local stormtrooper armed with a shotgun who went from store to store before business hours to blast colonies of sparrows and pile the bodies on the margins of the sidewalk for the garbage man. Being a fan of the colorful, the exotic, and the rare, I believe that scarlet tanagers, or the interesting sparrows like the black-throated, the golden-crowned, or the lake sparrow, should be protected, but basic brown ones were expendable. They belong to the same categories of enemies of higher culture as starlings, which traveled in gangs like Hell's Angels and were known to augment their daily diet with eggs stolen from other birds' nests, or cowbirds that, in imitation of the jet-sending rich, laid their eggs in some other bird's nest, forcing the host to be a surrogate mother. More than once I had come upon the hanging nest of a diminutive red-eyed vireo filled to overflowing with a ravenous baby cowbird, while the ground beneath was littered with the corpses of vireo fledglings that had either starved to death or been pushed from the nest. As a budding ornithologist, I did not object to the policy of extermination of lesser species. I even furthered it in my own modest way. Like most boys in the pre-television South, I went through the slingshot stage, which came before the era of the BB gun and the .22, and felt it was my right and duty to practice my marksmanship on small moving things. A forked stick, 2 strips from an old inner tube, a bit of leather, and a few smooth pebbles were all I needed for big game hunting. After a lot of practice, I was a good enough shot to bag sparrows and starlings and to terrorize chickens and strange dogs that wandered into our yard. One day in the front yard, while working on my marksmanship to avoid mowing the lawn, an anonymous bird flashed through the sky over my head. Without aiming, I let loose a missile in its general direction, and to my surprise, it fell dead at my feet. I was horrified to realize it was a yellow-bellied sapsucker, an exotic bird that I had never seen before. I picked up the lifeless bundle, caressed its yellow-gold breast with my finger, and felt deep shame for killing something so rare and beautiful. After that, I was never able to kill for sport. Although I had no love for the colonies of English sparrows, I came to respect the bare fact of their livingness. I understood that the great commandment to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God must be translated into the discipline of practicing reverence for all life. I was forced to recognize that all members of the Commonwealth, all species, rare or common, shared an unconditional will to live, which is the divine spirit within us. Standing or kneeling in the presence of the mystery of death and the miracle of life I had carelessly extinguished, I felt that ultimately there was no distinction among sparrows, sapsuckers, and me. I owed reverence, respect, and restraint to all. Holy happenings don't always involve lovely birds, beautiful sunsets, or lions lying down with lambs, however. It may happen in encounter with a creature from the dark side of the Force. This spring, I came upon the most awesome rattlesnake I had ever seen. A full 4 feet long, thick as my wrist and dark green at the head, tapering to lime green by mid-length. Only the last 12 inches before the rattles had the dark crisscross lines against a tan background that are typical of rattlesnakes. Feeling both fear and fascinations, I sat down at a safe distance and settled in to observe. Our eyes engaged. Nobody moved. As we remained in our silent encounter, my fear was gradually replaced by a sense of comfortable familiarity. For an eternal moment, I lost my habitual anthropocentric prejudice and found myself empathetically united with the rattlesnake. I was no longer a superior being, but instead a member of a family of sentient beings, all of whom love their way of life no less than I love mine. As I write this, I can almost hear the sneers and criticism, as though one could have a revelation by viper. What a ridiculous romantic notion. Modern normal people don't see symbols in snakes. In defense of the viper, I suggest that the goddess religions and the healing cult of Asclepius, both far older than Christianity, were wise to recognize the serpent as a messenger between the divinities of the underworld and the heavenly gods. Who better than a creature that yearly sheds its skin to teach us the gospel of the universal cycle of birth, death, and renewal? We are accustomed to the old metaphor of heavenly angels with feathered wings bringing us divine messages, but our age requires dark angels to remind us of the wisdom of the earth. Just the fact that I am amazed to see a wild snake in this paved and manicured world is a vivid reminder of how far we are from realizing that we are all a part of a single ecosystem. In our time, acid rain and deforestation are symptoms of the disease of human hubris that will be punished by plague, famine, and the extinction of many species unless we change our ways. Count on it. My rattlesnake was such a chthonic angel, an awesome creature who reminded me that we thrive or perish as members of a single sacred commonwealth. It is foolish to hear in the voice of the serpent an echo of a wandering prophet who taught us that we are all citizens of the kingdom of God. The task of authentic religion is not to create a biography of God, but to remind us to tread reverently on the humus, and to show compassion to all sentient beings. Any entity, person, or event may be sacramental, whether a dead sapsucker, a living rattlesnake, or the prophets of old. Another short essay, also by the same author, is entitled The Wood Thrush, an Enchanting Echo. If you are vigilant, you may see a wood thrush in the woods of Tennessee at almost any time of day. You can identify the species by its elegant dress. Think of a well-turned-out English gentleman of the old school. The bird's ground is tawny, passing into cinnamon brown on its back and shoulders, giving way to an olive-gray tail. It wears a contrasting polka-dot vest, the color of clotted cream, sprinkled liberally with blueberries. At high noon, the thrush hops around in low bushes and seems to have only modest ambitions and domestic concerns, as different from a brash blue jay as you can imagine. It quietly goes about feeding on a balanced diet of protein, ants, beetles, grasshoppers, caterpillars, and fruits, frost grapes, blackberries, and wild cherries. Often, as I would be gathering multicolored rocks with indecipherable hieroglyphic markings from the creek, or searching for a pine tree with chewable amber pitch oozing from its multi-layered bark, I would look up to get my bearings and be startled to see a thrush sitting on a nest just above eye level. I could see that thrushes were accomplished architects and builders. They chose a site where the nest would be well supported in the crotch of a sapling, the same spot I would have built a tree house. The foundation of the nest was constructed by inserting twigs, grass, and leaves into a matrix of wet mud, which dried to form a strong superstructure. The plush decor was made of soft grasses and bits of moss. Sometimes the finished dwelling would be decorated with pieces of ribbons or paper scavenged from the detritus left by humankind, although the nest offered both domestic security and creature comfort to its inhabitants. Whenever I came on a nest, I knew the rule, look but don't touch. Yet it was my duty as a budding ornithologist to make a careful examination of the state of affairs. If I found that a cowbird had deposited her eggs, forcing the thrush to become a nanny at the expense of her own young, I might remove the offending white-spotted eggs, leaving only the smallish greenish-blue ones. It wasn't until twilight that the thrush changed from domestic diva to shaman. From somewhere far away, a single note from its throat, like a bell calling me to matins, stopped me in my tracks. Suddenly I was dumbstruck and forgot that I was supposed to be hurrying to the opening in the fence, leaving the woods, and crossing Court Street in order to get home in time for dinner. I stood riveted to the spot, my ears straining to follow the enchanting sound until it disappeared into silence. The song of the wood thrush, or bellbird as it is sometimes known, is so haunting that bird lovers have gone to extremes to describe it. In Birds of America, it is variously expressed as sounding like the opening of Weber's Invitation to the Dance, the sweetly solemn thought of Handel's Largo, Faust's beautiful appeal to Margaret in the garden. But not many birders have tried to understand the particular nature of the haunting. The thrush's song belongs to a family of experiences that usher us into the threshold where sound trails off into silence, time disappears into timelessness, and the known world is engulfed by the great mystery. The family includes the reverberating echo of a temple bell that dwindles off into the void, the polyphonic chanting of Tibetan monks that merges into an endless communal chorus, the electric interval between the crash of thunder and the flash of lightning, the awful emptiness when the exhalation of a dying person is not followed by an inspiration, the deep sigh and profound calm that comes in meditation when the mind finally stops chattering, the timeless moment before sleep or after awakening when we enter a dream world in which it seems perfectly reasonable that we should fly, change gender, or simultaneously be ourselves and our parents. In these threshold moments, the spirit slips between the synapses of the mind. The normal illusion that there is nothing beyond the tyrannical march of profane time is dispelled, and we have a brief intimation of eternity and awareness of sacred time. In these pregnant voids, we come to understand the limit of our comprehension. We gain a tacit knowledge that our modes of experiencing time and the world are nothing more than the mechanisms, categories, and paradigms created by our limited minds. Like monarch butterflies confined on their migrations to low altitudes, our wings will not carry us into the vast regions of outer space. The proper name for this experience of unknowing is not mysticism, but wisdom. When Socrates was told that the oracle of Delphi said he was the wisest man in Greece, he replied that it could only mean that he knew what he did not know. Wisdom arises from the certain knowledge of our ignorance, and it teaches us that we dwell within a small circle of light surrounded by an immense mystery. According to tradition, the owl, the symbol of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, spread its wings only with the arrival of dusk. Wisdom is the paradoxical art of seeing in the dark. There are no wood thrushes in the sparsely wooded area of California where I live now, but there are great horned owls aplenty, and when they begin their low, uncanny hooting just after dusk, I am transported back to an earlier time, when I stood quietly at the threshold, listening to the thrush's invitation to evensong, and heard a faint echo of the silent music of the spheres. Over the years, the thrush's shaman song has gradually transformed me into an enchanted agnostic, unknowing, amazed. Let's hear it again for Pam Gorder, too, here. Woo!
Thanks to both Jeff and Pam for those wonderful readings. I feel like I've been in a tornado, by a volcano, and I always love to go birding, so thank you so much for that and for taking time out of your busy schedules to read for us. Thanks to all of you for coming out. This is our last program for the quarter, and we'll be returning, I believe it's April 9th. If you've ever been to a Naked Sunfish ReadAloud, I assume you'll come to this one because we have the popular e-magazine contributors coming to do one of their programs for us. It'll include music, some avant-garde poetry, and you never know what else. So thanks again. Good luck with your finals, everybody. And we'll see you next month. Take care.